Welcome. Take a moment to get comfortable. Let the day drift softly behind you. You're here now in a quiet space with nothing you need to do, except listen, relax, and allow your mind to wander gently through time. Tonight, we journey into the shadowy folds of feudal Japan, but not the kind of Japan you might see in an action film. There will be no dramatic leaps across rooftops, no theatrical sword fights, and no whisper-thin trails of smoke vanishing into the night. Instead, we'll explore the truth behind one of history's most misunderstood roles, that of the ninja, or more properly, the shinobi. Their legend is wrapped in mystery, myth, and modern misunderstanding. But behind the fiction was a life of secrecy, discipline, and danger, lived not for glory, but for survival. As always, our journey unfolds in 4 parts. We all begin with daily life, imagining what it was really like to live as a ninja recruit, far from the glamour of legend. Then we'll meet one of history's most famous figures of the shinobi tradition, Hattori Hanzō. In the 3rd part, we'll quietly examine the tools and tactics of the trade, separating useful deception from cinematic illusion. And finally, we will step into the palatial world of the samurai elite to see the world the ninja worked within, yet always from its margins. If you enjoy these calm, quiet journeys into the past, feel free to gently tap the like button and consider subscribing so you'll have more peaceful history to return to whenever you need it. So close your eyes if you'd like, or simply soften your gaze. Let the rhythm of time slow and drift with me into the shadows of the past. Imagine yourself waking before the sun has even touched the rooftops. The air is still, and the sky is that strange deep indigo just before it turns gray. You're curled up under a thin blanket on a straw mat that creaks with every movement. Cold air sneaks in through the wooden slats in the wall. You don't have a fire. The smoke would be too obvious, too traceable. There is no bell to wake you. No one calls your name, but you know it's time. You rise slowly, careful not to wake the others if there are others at all. In the life of a shinobi, sometimes even your roommates are strangers. Other times it's just you, tucked into a hollow in the hillside, living like a fox among the trees. Your stomach already aches from hunger. The rice from last night was thin, watery. You've trained yourself not to think about food too often. A shinobi cannot afford to be ruled by appetite. The first task of the day is not glamorous. It is not about swords or missions or disguise. It is discipline. You stretch. You squat. You walk low and silent across the damp earth, practicing steps that make no sound. You crawl, you roll, you climb a tree and descend without snapping a twig. Again and again. These motions are slow, intentional, repeated until your muscles remember them more than your mind does. Your breathing becomes soft. Your presence becomes small. These movements are your armor. Later, your training partner, older, quieter, and already missing half a finger, hands you a small pouch. Inside are dried beans. Your task is to scatter them behind you while walking across packed dirt, and return to erase all trace of them without being seen. Not one can remain. Every lesson is like this, simple but endless. You may think of weapons, but your teacher, often called simply sensei, rarely places one in your hand. Weapons are loud, he tells you. The blade is what you use when you've already failed. Instead, you're taught to look, to listen, You lie flat on your stomach for hours, observing a neighbor's house. You count how often they go to the well, how many children live there, what direction the door faces, where the shadows fall at dusk. You learn how to become a part of the landscape, not invisible, but unnoticed. And as you lie there, the earth beneath you is soft, slightly moist. There is a scent of turned soil and nearby compost. Insects tickle your legs, but you do not move. You are practicing patience. Later in the week, you're sent into town, not as yourself. Today you're a pot seller. You carry broken wares on your back. Your feet ache in the thin straw sandals, and the midday sun prickles the skin at your neck. Your job is not to sell. Your job is to listen. You linger at corners, pretend to stumble, apologize with a bow, and linger long enough to hear which lord is hiring new guards or whose wife has fallen ill. These details matter, because in the quiet world of the shinobi, information is more valuable than gold, and secrets are often your only weapon. But there is more, much more. In the evening, you practice with tools, not swords, not arrows, but things more subtle. You hold a reed between your fingers and practice breathing silently through it, just beneath the surface of the river. You coat small stones in ink and drop them from various heights, watching how they land. You learn to memorize paths through the forest by the bend of a branch, the placement of moss, the smell of wet cedar. Sometimes you train with poisons, not the dramatic kind, no bubbling cauldrons, no fatal potions, just herbs and roots. You taste them on the edge of your tongue, just enough to recognize, not enough to suffer. You learn that too much of one can cause blurred vision. Another, when boiled into tea, may make someone sleep more deeply. Another still may mimic illness, causing your target to withdraw without suspicion. This is the shadowy arsenal of the shinobi. Not bombs, not blades, but time, observation, and intent. And yet, even with all this, the greatest burden is not the physical. It is the solitude. You are alone. You carry secrets, and in doing so, you become distant from others. A shinobi cannot afford close ties. Love, friendship, even family, these are vulnerabilities. And vulnerabilities are liabilities. So you learn to laugh less, speak less, feel less. You train yourself to become a mirror, reflecting what others expect to see, while hiding the self that lies beneath. And the fear, it never fully fades. Even when your mission is done, even when you are in your bed, if you are lucky enough to have one, the thought lingers, who saw me? Who suspects? Did I leave a mark? Was my message intercepted? And if you are caught, there is no trial. You will not be rescued. Your name will not be spoken again. And so, with every mission, you erase a little more of yourself. You become the shadow, the wind, the unseen. But even shadows grow weary. Even the wind grows cold. And yet, still, you endure, because this is the life of a ninja, not of fantasy, but of endurance, not of spectacle, but of stillness, not of glory, but of quiet survival. The life, loyalty, and legend of Japan's most famous ninja. As the candle of your imagination flickers gently in the night, let's travel further into the fog of feudal Japan, to the story of a man who left behind no grand speeches, no colorful memoirs, and no statues cast in bronze. And yet his name still drifts like smoke through history. Hattori Hanzō, a name that feels theatrical, mysterious, almost too perfect to be real. But behind the exaggerated depictions lies a figure whose influence was quieter and far more enduring. To understand Hanzō's story, we must first return to a time of uncertainty, to the 16th century, during Japan's Sengoku Jidai, or Warring States period. It was a time without unity, without peace. Local warlords, daimyo, ruled with shifting alliances, temporary truces, and sudden betrayals. Villages could wake under one banner and go to bed under another. The social order was always in motion, like a pond with too many stones dropped in. Power did not rest easily. It moved constantly, often violently. Hanzō was born in 1542 into the Hattori clan. His birthplace was likely the province of Iga, a region known even then for its mountainous terrain, winding forest paths, and above all, its shinobi. Unlike more urban areas, Iga was remote and difficult to access. In its valleys and ridges, families passed down knowledge, not just of farming or fishing, but of stealth, strategy, and subterfuge. These were not flashy assassins. They were practical survivalists, observers, manipulators of terrain and timing. And young Hanzō, born into this tradition, would have grown up not with dreams of glory, but with lessons in watching the wind, listening to gravel underfoot, and staying absolutely still when necessary. Historical accounts of Hanzō's early life are sparse. His first nickname was Hanzō the Spear, reportedly earned at the age of 16 during a military skirmish. This tells us two things. He fought young, and he fought well. He was not merely a spy. He could also command on the battlefield when needed, though that was never his first tool. Over time, Hanzō entered the service of a man whose ambitions would eventually reshape Japan, Tokugawa Ieyasu. Ieyasu, like many daimyo of the time, was constantly maneuvering through the complex web of power, sometimes an ally, sometimes a hostage, sometimes a betrayer, always a survivor. It was during one of these dangerous junctures that Hanzō stepped into historical prominence. In the early 1560s, Tokugawa Ieyasu found himself in a perilous position. His wife and son were held hostage by a rival lord, a political tactic not uncommon at the time. Releasing them without diplomatic disaster seemed impossible. Moving them safely across enemy lands, unthinkable. And yet, that is exactly what Hanzō did, quietly, without fanfare. According to the oldest accounts, Hanzō orchestrated a stealth extraction through mountain passes, under the cover of night, across winding rivers and past watchful guards. He used decoys, scouts, and local informants. No record tells us exactly how it was done, which in many ways is fitting, because that's how Hanzō worked, with silence, with care, with a kind of subtlety that leaves no trace. After this, Ieyasu's trust in Hanzō deepened. The general began to rely on him not only for missions, but for wisdom, loyalty, precision. Hanzō became commander of a group of warriors from Iga and the neighboring region of Koga, regions both famed for their shinobi traditions. These men were not simply sword fighters or scouts. They were specialists, experts in infiltration, intelligence, misinformation, and sabotage. What Hanzō built under Ieyasu's banner wasn't just a fighting unit. It was an intelligence network, quiet, mobile, effective. There is an account, though softened by time, that tells of Hanzō refusing to draw his sword on a retreating enemy. The man had once been an ally and was fleeing in disgrace. To cut him down would have been easy, expected even, but Hanzō let him go, honoring a past bond. Ieyasu reportedly admired this, noting that Hanzō's sword was as controlled as his mind. As Ieyasu's political power expanded, Hanzō's duties did as well. He reportedly led covert operations against rival clans, protected Ieyasu from assassination attempts, and even devised methods of internal surveillance among Ieyasu's own ranks, ensuring loyalty not through fear, but through quiet accountability. And yet, despite his growing influence, Hanzō remained in the shadows. He did not seek titles or land. He preferred to serve, to observe, to act when necessary, and disappear when not. He was feared, but not flamboyant, known, but not fully understood. There are many stories attached to his name, that he could walk through walls, that he wielded mystical powers, that he died in battle, or didn't die at all. Some say he became a monk. Others say he faked his death and continued serving behind the scenes. The truth is quieter. Hanzō died in 1596 at the age of 54, likely of natural causes. At the time of his death, Ieyasu was rising. Within a few years, he would become the shogun, unifying Japan under the Tokugawa shogunate, an era of relative peace that would last over 250 years. And Hanzō had helped make that possible. Not with thunder, but with whispers. Not with declarations, but with footsteps. Today, his name survives in unexpected places. In Tokyo, the Hanzaman Gate still stands, part of the outer perimeter of the imperial palace. It was once guarded by Hanzō and his men, though few who pass through it today think of what it meant to be a silent protector. There is also the Hanzaman subway line, which slides beneath the city like a quiet tribute to a man who moved beneath the surface. And then there is the legacy, embellished, exaggerated, reshaped by modern fiction. You've seen it, perhaps without knowing. A character in a movie, a sword forged by Hattori Hanzō, a figure cloaked in black, leaping through smoke. But the real Hanzō was more patient than powerful, more precise than brutal. He lived in a time when trust was rare, and proved that it could be earned not through words, but through years of quiet service. His legend grew not because he sought attention, but because in a noisy world, he remained perfectly, powerfully quiet. Take a moment. Let that silence settle with you. And when you're ready, we'll begin our descent into the quieter arts, the tools and techniques that made the shinobi more than mere myth. The quiet art of the shinobi, what they really used, and what they didn't. As you rest, let your thoughts slow. Breathe in gently. You are no longer in the presence of a legend like Hattori Hanzō. You are not inside a castle or on a battlefield. Instead, you are in a darkened room, quiet, spare, empty but for a small wooden chest, its iron clasp unlatched. Inside lie the tools of a shinobi. Not gadgets, not magic, not explosive devices that fit in a sleeve, but simple objects, each designed with patience and purpose. This is the quiet craft of the ninja. Let's begin with the shuko, climbing claws. These were iron bands fitted over the palms, often with spikes protruding from the underside. Contrary to popular belief, they weren't used for fighting. Instead, they were tools of movement, a way to grip trees, walls, even ice. They allowed a shinobi to scale a structure without leaving marks or relying on ropes that could be seen from below. They were not flashy, but they worked. Next, we find the ashiko iron cleats worn on the feet. Paired with the shuko, they offered stability, particularly in wet or forested terrain. Think of them not as weapons, but as walking aids, helping the ninja move where others might slip. Now, reach deeper into the box. Feel the small weight of tetsubashi, caltrops, spiked metal stars designed so that one spike always pointed upward, no matter how they landed. A shinobi might scatter these on a dirt path behind them while escaping, not to harm, but to slow pursuit. A pursuing guard stepping on one would stumble, hesitate, and that moment was all the ninja needed to vanish into the trees. They weren't used to inflict pain. They were used to create time. You'll also find small, hollow tubes, fukea, or blowpipes. These were used to launch tiny darts, often coated in a light tranquilizer or irritant derived from local plants. Not to kill, but to distract, disable, confuse. The darts were so small they might not even be noticed at first. A guard would feel a sting, scratch it absently, and in a few moments find their vision dimming or their legs weakening. Sometimes the blowpipes weren't used for darts at all. They were breathing tools, letting a shinobi remain submerged just beneath the surface of a pond, invisible to the eye, breathing through a reed in perfect stillness. Then there are tools even simpler still. A pouch of blackened powder made from crushed charcoal, pepper, ground seeds. Not a weapon, but a blinding agent. If discovered or cornered, the ninja might throw this into the eyes of an opponent. Not to harm, but to disappear. A moment of confusion, a cough, a tear, and the shadow was gone. Other tools weren't tools at all. They were disguises, costumes, mannerisms. A shinobi might spend days practicing how to walk like an elderly merchant, or how to stoop just enough to appear injured. They could pretend to be a monk collecting offerings, a farmer sowing a field, a woodcutter too poor to bother noticing the affairs of lords. These acts were as important as any weapon. A shinobi who wasn't believed was a shinobi who didn't survive. Sometimes the best tool was silence. Other times, it was a story well told. And then we come to the black outfit. The tight suit, the head covering, the slits for the eyes. This image has become inseparable from the word ninja. But in reality, it likely wasn't used at all. Not by real shinobi, not in real missions. The image of the black-clad figure comes not from history, but from the kabuki theater of the Edo period. In these plays, stagehands would dress all in black to indicate they were not part of the story, much like how modern filmmakers hide camera crews off-screen. But in dramatic scenes, one of these invisible stagehands might suddenly act, assassinate a character, steal a scroll, strike from the shadows. The audience was startled, delighted, caught off guard, and thus the black-suited ninja was born. But the real shinobi dressed to blend in. They wore brown, gray, tan, the muted tones of dirt and trees, sometimes even blues and greens, whatever would let them fade into the crowd or the countryside. They did not want to stand out. They wanted to vanish. The same can be said for their weapons. You may have heard of the ninjado, a short, straight-bladed sword often pictured with a square guard. But this weapon, too, is more myth than history. There is little evidence of it being used by real shinobi. More likely, they used whatever was available: small knives, sickles, even farming tools, repurposed in clever ways. Function over form, purpose over appearance. Even the famous ninja scrolls or densho were not filled with mystical spells or secret passwords. They were practical documents, outlining techniques for camouflage, notes on terrain, medicinal recipes, or diagrams of local castles. They were written not in secret code, but in plain, structured Japanese, because their value wasn't in being unreadable, it was in being useful. So many myths have clung to the word ninja: smoke bombs, magic steps, disappearing acts, but the truth is quieter. A real shinobi relied on observation, on misdirection, on the power of suggestion, not by disappearing into thin air, but by becoming so ordinary no one ever looked twice. Now, let that idea rest in your mind, that the most powerful tools are not always the ones that make noise. They are the ones used with care, with patience, with thought, and with that, we turn our gaze to those who lived on the other side of the equation, to the lords and elite warriors whose polished rituals and rigid codes shaped the world the ninja moved through. Honor, ritual, and the world the ninja navigated. Let us now walk further into the interior spaces of feudal Japan, not the muddy trails or wind-blown forests where the shinobi passed unseen, but into homes of paper and polished wood, into the ritual-filled chambers of those who moved beneath banners, not shadows, the samurai. And here we slow, for theirs was not a world of fast movements or sudden decisions. It was a life paced like a tea ceremony, precise, refined, and heavily weighted with meaning. It is morning. You are the head of a samurai household. Your home lies within a castle town, a place not just of stone walls and towers, but of ordered lives. Your dwelling is modestly large, rooms separated not by walls, but by sliding shoshi screens made of rice paper and wooden frames. The walls do not hold paintings, but kakemono, hanging scrolls with seasonal poetry, or simple ink-washed depictions of cranes, rivers, mountains, and mist, each chosen carefully, each changed with the seasons. There is no rush, no chaos. Everything follows form. The first sound you hear is the quiet swish of a sliding screen. A servant enters silently, offering warm water in a lacquered bowl to wash your hands and face. The scent of morning incense drifts nearby, sandalwood, perhaps, or a loose wood, burned in reverence to the passing of time. Before breakfast, you kneel before your ancestral altar. There, small named tablets, ihai, bear the characters of your forebears. You bow your head, offer a pinch of incense, and say a prayer for guidance. The sword at your side, resting in its plain scabbard, does not gleam or cry for attention. It is simply there, like your title, like your duty. And breakfast is humble. Rice, pickled plum, a bowl of miso soup, cloudy and fragrant. You eat with measured motions, never slurping, never hurrying. Your children, if they are old enough, sit across from you, mirroring your posture, your gestures. In this way, they learn the most important lesson of all, restraint. The way of the samurai is often thought of as the way of the sword, but that is only one thread in a much larger weave. The heart of the samurai's life is structure. From the moment he wakes to the hour he sleeps, a samurai's world is bound in duty. There is a ritual for greeting, a ritual for parting, for writing a letter, for drinking tea, for receiving a guest, for entering a room. Each of these practices is both a shield and a stage, a way to protect one's dignity and broadcast one's discipline. There is no room for error, for in the court of a daimyo, a feudal lord, an improperly folded letter or an incorrectly placed hand can be taken as a slight. It is said that samurai learned calligraphy not only to compose poetry, but to control their breath, that even their brush strokes could reveal the steadiness of their spirit. But this structure could also be suffocating, for within these elegant routines lived deep tension. A samurai could be ordered to take his own life, seppuku, for a political misstep, a misunderstood phrase, or even for serving the wrong master at the wrong time. Honor was absolute and fragile. It did not forgive mistakes, and so the samurai walked a narrow bridge of grace, poised, controlled, proud, but always at risk of falling. In times of war, a samurai might command troops or ride beneath a clan's banner. But during peace, and there was peace for much of the Edo period, his life was one of administration. He became a scholar, a tax collector, a city magistrate, a tutor of the arts. He studied swordplay in the morning and flower arranging in the afternoon. In his free time, if there was any, he might compose poetry, waka or haiku, verses so short they could fit on the edge of a fan. Many samurai wrote of impermanence, of falling leaves, of melting snow, of moments beautiful and brief. Meanwhile, in the corners of the shoin, the formal study, guests might be received for strategic conversation. Tea might be served from porcelain bowls. The tatami floor creaked softly beneath bowed heads. And always the samurai listened, for information was power, and behind every smile was the possibility of a challenge. This was the world the shinobi entered, quietly, uninvited, unnoticed. The samurai's predictability, his rules, his ceremonies, his reliance on appearances made him vulnerable to someone who understood how to move without pattern. The shinobi, trained to observe every tilt of the body, every crack in the routine, could read a household like a scroll. And yet, many shinobi came from the very world they infiltrated. Not all were peasants or farmers. Some were disgraced samurai, ronin, masterless, directionless, but still deadly. The life of a ronin was one of exile. He had once sat in these chambers, bowed at these altars. Now he moved in shadow, using the same discipline, the same focus, but to different ends. It is a tragic irony. The rituals that once gave life meaning had, in their rigidity, pushed him out. And now he returned, not through the front gate, but through the garden wall. The samurai, for all his power, was often unaware. His world was not built for deception. It was built for display. His armor was lacquered, his helmet crested, his documents stamped, his house guarded. But the shinobi did not approach these things head-on. He slipped through the cracks in the system. And so even the strongest samurai was never truly safe. Still, there was beauty in this life. The quiet of the tea house, the evening breeze through the paper windows, the moon reflected in the garden pond, where carp swam without worry. A samurai might sit there, hands folded, sword resting by his knee, and contemplate death not with fear, but with acceptance. He knew it could come with a word, a message, a mistake. And still he served, he studied, he walked with control, he dressed with care, he carried his house, and his honor like armor on his back. And when his time came, he hoped to meet it not with desperation, but with the same silence he had practiced each morning, each night, for all the days of his life. And now, as we prepare to leave this world of curved swords and quiet rooms, let the contrast settle in your thoughts. The samurai and the shinobi, one a man of ritual, the other a master of breaking it, both shaped by discipline, both haunted by impermanence. Two paths bound by time, now vanished, and now our time together draws to a close. But there is no need to rush. Let the story linger in the quiet spaces of your mind, like fading footsteps on an old stone path. We have wandered slowly and carefully through a world of stillness and tension, a world shaped not by noise, but by nuance. We have stepped into the worn sandals of a shinobi recruit, rising before dawn, training in mud and silence, living with patience, and surviving by disappearing. We have walked beside Hattori Hanzō, not the myth, but the man, steady, loyal, precise, a ghost by reputation, and a strategist by truth. We have opened the small wooden chest of ninja tools and found not weapons of war, but instruments of cleverness, climbing claws, powder, reeds, and quiet tricks of the mind. And finally, we sat among the polished stillness of the samurai, observing the rituals that shaped their days, the honor that bound them, and the beautiful fragility of a life lived within such narrow lines. And now you are here, somewhere between shadow and silence, somewhere between what was and what now rests. If your eyes are closed, keep them so. Let your breath move slowly. Let your body settle into the warmth beneath your blanket, like a leaf sinking gently to the bottom of a still pond. There is nothing you must remember, no detail to hold, only the feeling of stillness, of quiet, of time moving like a breeze across an old village road. The shinobi are gone, the samurai are gone, but for a little while they lived again in your imagination, and perhaps that is enough. If this quiet walk through history brought you peace, you are welcome to return again. There are many more stories waiting gently behind the shoshi doors of time. If you'd like to softly support this journey, feel free to leave a like or subscribe for more calming explorations. But for now, sleep deeply, unhurried, and undisturbed. You are far from the noise of the world. You are safe, and the night is yours. Good night.